Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy my video, please click the like button and share the video. It is the only way the YouTube algorithms really notices me. I will be very grateful to you. They saw something on camera. Never watched Channel 13. Scary story published by Scare Fiction. Read for you by Scare Fiction. Chapter 1. Static Whispers. The rain hammered against Sarah's window, a relentless rhythm that mirrored the relentless beat of deadlines hammering in her skull. As a junior at Elmwood University, majoring in literature, Sarah thrived on last-minute heroics. Tonight, however, the well of inspiration seemed bone dry. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, the blinking cursor, a mocking eye judging her blank document. She wasn't your typical college student. While others sported the latest trends and spent their nights at frat parties, Sarah was more comfortable in vintage sweaters and dusty libraries. Her friends teased her about resembling a character out of a Jane Austen novel, with her auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun and a pair of oversized glasses perched at the end of her nose. But beneath the unassuming exterior lay a sharp intellect and a curiosity that bordered on the obsessive. From childhood, Sarah had been drawn to the fringes of reality, obsessed with ghost stories, urban legends, and anything that hinted at the unseen world. Tonight, though, even the allure of the paranormal couldn't distract her from the looming project deadline. With a sigh of defeat, she pushed back from the desk and wandered towards the living room, desperation fueling her craving for a distraction. Flicking on the old television, a relic from her grandmother's estate, she scanned the channels, hoping for a rerun of some obscure documentary that might spark a creative fire. Reality TV blared, a sitcom track laughed on mute, and a news report crackled with static. She sighed, flinging herself back onto the worn couch, boredom gnawing at her like a persistent mouse. Suddenly, a flicker on the screen caught her eye. It wasn't the usual snowy static, but a pulsating swirl of gray and white, like a dying light bulb struggling to hold on to its last gasp. Curiosity piqued. She reached out and adjusted the antenna just a fraction. The image came into sharper focus, revealing a scene unlike anything she'd ever seen. A desolate landscape stretched before her, devoid of color. Jagged black rocks jutted from the cracked gray earth, and a sickly, pale sky hung heavy overhead. The air shimmered with an unnatural heat haze, distorting the view. In the distance, jagged mountain ranges seemed carved from obsidian, their peaks clawing at the lifeless sky. An unsettling silence filled the room, broken only by a faint, rhythmic crackling that seemed to emanate from the television itself. Then, a sound. A whisper, but not a human whisper. It was a rasping, guttural sound that slithered through the silence, sending shivers down Sarah's spine. The language was alien, a string of clicks and hisses that resonated deep within her, a primal fear she couldn't explain. Mesmerized, she leaned closer, straining to understand. The whisper became a low moan, building in intensity until it erupted into a cacophony of shrieks and screeches. Panic surged through her veins. This wasn't a glitch. It was something more, something sinister. Just as abruptly as it started, the sound cut out. The screen flickered back to a snowstorm of static. Sarah stared, heart pounding, the image of the desolate world and the unearthly sounds echoing in her mind. Had she imagined it? Reaching over, she flicked the channel up and down. Reality, TV sitcom, laugh tracks, the news all back to normal. A shiver racked her body. Dismissing it as a late-night hallucination, fueled by exhaustion, she switched off the television and plunged the room into darkness. But as she lay in bed, eyes squeezed shut, the whispers continued to haunt her. They slithered through her dreams, weaving into gruesome nightmares of the desolate landscape, and the horrifying voice. Sleep evaded her, replaced by a gnawing sense of unease. The experience lingered through the day, a shadow at the corner of her mind. She went about her routine, but the image of the strange world wouldn't leave her. Was it just a bizarre dream, or was there something more to Channel 13? Chapter 2. Down the Digital Rabbit Hole. The insistent chirping of her alarm clock jolted Sarah awake. The oppressive dreams of the desolate landscape and the chilling whispers lingered, leaving a bitter taste in her mouth. She dragged herself out of bed, the image of the distorted broadcast flickering at the edges of her vision. Exhaustion gnawed at her, but the experience on Channel 13 wouldn't leave her alone. It was too vivid, too real to be dismissed as a mere sleep hallucination. She needed to talk to someone who wouldn't dismiss her concerns as overactive imagination. Her first thought was Tom, her best friend since childhood. A walking, talking encyclopedia of all things strange and unexplained. She knew he'd be intrigued by her story. He lived down the street, a perpetually messy haven adorned with faded UFO posters and an overflowing bookshelf dedicated to the paranormal. Reaching his apartment, she was greeted by a cloud of cigarette smoke and the rhythmic pounding of heavy metal filtering from his room. "Tom, you awake?" she called out, pushing open the door. There he was, sprawled across a beanbag chair in a rumpled t-shirt and jeans, illuminated by the flickering glow of his computer screen. A half-eaten bowl of instant noodles sat on the coffee table beside a sea of crumpled papers. "Sarah," he exclaimed, a manic glint in his eyes, "you won't believe what I just found." She recounted her encounter with Channel 13, the unsettling landscape, the whispers, the raw fear. Tom listened intently, his initial skepticism giving way to a look of wide-eyed fascination. "That's incredible, Sarah. You stumbled upon something real, a hidden broadcast. He paused, searching for the right word, a glitch in the matrix." Over the next few hours, their apartment transformed into a makeshift command center. Fueled by a potent brew of coffee and nervous energy, Tom delved into the murky depths of the internet. He scoured obscure forums, conspiracy theory websites, and late-night radio archives, searching for any mention of Channel 13. Their search yielded a chilling harvest. Scattered across the digital landscape, they found fragmented stories of others who witnessed the broadcast. A trucker experiencing inexplicable car trouble after watching static on Channel 13. A recluse claiming nightmares of a desolate world filled with unearthly screams. A group of teenagers reporting strange occurrences after attempting to contact the source of the signal. As the night wore on, a sense of foreboding settled over them. These weren't mere glitches. Something sinister lurked behind the static, a force that seemed to prey on the vulnerable. But the most unsettling discovery came from a hidden forum dedicated to exploring the fringes of reality. It detailed a ritual to access Channel 13 clearly, a complex process involving adjusting specific TV settings and playing a certain otherworldly frequency. Tom's eyes gleamed with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Sarah," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "we can try it. We can unlock the secrets of Channel 13. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine. Curiosity warred with a gnawing sense of unease. Had she stumbled upon something more dangerous than she ever imagined? Chapter 3. Unveiling the Horror. Tom's words hung in the air, heavy with a mix of daring and trepidation. Sarah stared at the cryptic instructions on the computer screen, a ritual to access Channel 13 in its full, horrifying glory. "Are you sure about this, Tom?" she asked, her voice laced with doubt. "It's the only way to know for sure," he replied, a nervous edge to his usual bravado. "We can see what this broadcast is all about, maybe even stop it." Curiosity battled fear within Sarah. The stories of nightmares and paranormal occurrences replayed in her mind, a chilling premonition. But the thought of leaving the mystery unresolved, of being haunted by fragmented whispers, was equally unsettling. "All right," she finally sighed, a knot of apprehension tightening in her stomach. "Let's do it." Following the cryptic instructions, they embarked on a strange dance around the dusty television. Specific channels were flipped in a precise sequence, the antenna adjusted in increments, and finally, a low, pulsating frequency filled the room, emanating from Tom's laptop speakers. The television screen shimmered, the familiar static intensifying into a swirling vortex of color. The room plunged into an unnatural silence, broken only by the low hum of the frequency. Then, with a deafening crackle, the image stabilized. It wasn't the desolate landscape Sarah witnessed before. This was a scene ripped straight from a nightmare. A barren wasteland stretched as far as the eye could see, a red sky choked by swirling black clouds. Jagged, volcanic rock formations clawed at the sky, and the air seemed to crackle with an unseen energy. In the distance, a lone figure writhed on the ground, its form obscured by darkness. It screamed, a sound that defied description, a primal howl of agony that resonated deep within their bones. Despite the distorted picture, Sarah saw the impossible. The figure turned its head, its unseen eyes connecting with them through the static. A jolt of raw terror ripped through Sarah, freezing her in place. This wasn't a mere broadcast. It was a window into another world, a glimpse of a monstrous entity trapped in its desolate prison. The figure screamed again, the sound morphing into unintelligible words in the same alien language Sarah heard before. Then, as abruptly as it began, the image fractured, dissolving back into the swirling static. The frequency died, and an unsettling silence descended upon the room. They stared at the screen, their faces pale and drawn. Did we just see another dimension?" whispered Tom, his voice barely a rasp. Sarah couldn't speak. The image of the suffering figure, its connection with them through the static, burned into her mind. They hadn't just stumbled upon a hidden broadcast. They had interacted with a horrifying entity, one that seemed to acknowledge their presence. A shared vision washed over them, unbidden and terrifying. They saw themselves, standing on the desolate wasteland, the red sky swirling above. An unseen force nudged at their minds, a chilling whisper echoing in their heads, "Welcome to the other side." The vision faded as quickly as it came, leaving them shaken and breathless. Tom snapped his laptop shut, silencing the eerie hum that lingered in the air. "We shouldn't have done that, Sarah," he mumbled, his voice thick with regret. Sarah could only nod, a cold dread gnawing at her insides. They unlocked the secrets of Channel 13, but the knowledge came at a terrifying cost. Their world had shifted, and the line between reality and the unseen was forever blurred. Chapter 4: Fractures in Reality. The following days were a blur of exhaustion and disorientation for Sarah. Sleep became a torment, a battlefield where she wrestled with nightmares of the desolate wasteland and the horrifying entity. In her dreams, the red sky bled into her bedroom ceiling, and the alien whispers echoed through the quiet hum of her refrigerator. During the day, she functioned on autopilot, a hollow shell haunted by the lingering dread. The vibrant world around her seemed muted, the laughter of friends and the bustle of campus life fading into a distant hum. Tom, however, seemed strangely unaffected. He emanated a manic energy, his eyes glittering with an unhealthy obsession. Gone were the late nights spent browsing conspiracy theories. Now, his computer screen displayed complex equations and diagrams from advanced physics and quantum mechanics. He devoured obscure research papers on wormholes, parallel dimensions, and the nature of reality itself. "There has to be a scientific explanation, Sarah," he'd say, his voice laced with a fervor that bordered on mania. "Channel 13 is a bridge, a gateway to another reality, and I'm going to figure out how it works." Sarah tried to share her concerns, to describe the chilling vision they experienced, but her words seemed to bounce off Tom's newly built wall of scientific theories. He dismissed her nightmares as a manifestation of psychological stress, a byproduct of the unsettling experience. Desperate for answers and a shred of sanity, Sarah embarked on her own search. Scouring the internet, she stumbled upon a name mentioned in one of Tom's research papers, Dr. Evan Evans, a retired physics professor who had delved into the study of anomalous broadcasts decades ago. With a sliver of hope, she tracked down his contact information and made the call. A raspy voice answered, weary but surprisingly cheerful. He agreed to meet her, his address located in a quiet, book-filled corner of town. Dr. Evans was a frail man with kind eyes and a shock of white hair. His cluttered apartment spoke of a life dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge. Sarah poured out her story, the encounter with Channel 13, the terrifying vision, and the unsettling change in Tom. As she spoke, a flicker of recognition crossed Dr. Evans' face. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers, and revealed a secret he had kept buried for years. Channel 13, he said, his voice low, was part of a government project decades ago. We were trying to push the boundaries of communication, to explore the possibility of interdimensional travel. We succeeded, but not in the way we intended. He went on to explain how the project unlocked a portal to another dimension, a barren wasteland inhabited by a powerful, unknowable entity. The project was shut down, but the entity remained, its presence bleeding through on Channel 13, a ghostly echo of a failed experiment. The entity feeds on fear, Dr. Evans continued, his voice grave. It can influence viewers, manipulate their perception, and draw power from their nightmares. Sarah felt a cold dread grip her heart. Tom's obsession? His relentless research? Could it be the entity's influence already taking hold? Dr. Evans confirmed her fear. He might be more susceptible than you, he explained. The entity seeks those with a strong, curious mind, someone it can manipulate for its own purposes. A new terror gnawed at Sarah. She wasn't just worried about the entity anymore. She feared for Tom. They needed to find a way to sever the connection, to shut down Channel 13 for good before it completely consumed them both. Chapter 5. Echoes of a Forgotten Project. Dr. Evans' words hung heavy in the air, a chilling revelation that cast a long shadow over Sarah's already troubled mind. The man before her, frail but with a glint of determination in his eyes, confessed to being a part of the very project that unleashed the horror plaguing them. You were involved in opening the portal? Sarah stammered, the weight of the truth sinking in. He nodded, a flicker of regret crossing his face. It was a different time, Sarah. We were young, driven by ambition, convinced we were pushing the boundaries of science for the betterment of humanity. We never anticipated the consequences. He explained how the project, shrouded in secrecy, aimed to explore interdimensional travel. They believed they could manipulate electromagnetic waves to create a bridge between realities. Their calculations were precise, but they underestimated the power they were dealing with. The experiment was a success, Dr. Evans continued, his voice laced with a hint of awe, but a terrifying one. We opened a portal, a window to a desolate wasteland unlike anything we could have imagined. And there, on the other side, was something. He couldn't describe the entity. Words seemed inadequate to capture its horrifying essence. But the project team sensed its malevolent power, its hunger for something beyond mere observation. When they understood the danger they had unleashed, they acted swiftly. The project was shut down, the equipment dismantled, and the portal forcefully closed. But something remained. Channel 13, an unused frequency, became a persistent echo of the failed experiment. The entity, trapped in its desolate dimension, used this channel as a conduit, a way to reach out, to influence the minds of unsuspecting viewers. "It feeds on fear," Dr. Evans emphasized, his gaze locking with Sarah's. "The stronger the fear, the more susceptible you are. That's why you're experiencing nightmares, Sarah. You're resisting its influence." A flicker of hope sparked within Sarah. If she was resistant, then maybe there was a way to fight back. "Why me, then?" she asked, a sliver of defiance creeping into her voice. "Why not Tom?" Dr. Evans sighed. "He's different. His mind, curious and open, is a fertile ground for the entity. It can manipulate his research, twist his scientific pursuit into a tool to understand and perhaps even reopen the portal." A cold dread washed over Sarah. Tom, her best friend, was already under the entity's influence, lost in a research frenzy fueled by a sinister force. Dr. Evans assured her that not all hope was lost. He had spent decades studying the entity, searching for a way to sever the connection. There was a chance, a risky one, but a chance nonetheless. He explained his plan, a powerful electromagnetic pulse targeted at the source of the broadcast, Channel 13. It was a long shot, but it might disrupt the entity's hold, sever the bridge between realities, and silence the channel for good. But gathering the necessary equipment, and more importantly, convincing a skeptical Tom of the plan's legitimacy, seemed like insurmountable hurdles. Sarah, however, was no longer the scared, withdrawn girl who stumbled upon the unsettling broadcast. Dr. Evans' revelation had ignited a spark of determination within her. She wouldn't let the entity win. She would save Tom, and in doing so, slam the door shut on the horror that lurked on the other side of Channel 13. Chapter 6, A Fractured Mind. Days bled into nights as Sarah became consumed with the mission. Dr. Evans' plan, a desperate gamble against an unseen entity, was their only hope. Yet, acquiring the necessary equipment proved challenging. Scrambling through online forums and back-alley electronic stores, they cobbled together a makeshift EMP device, a Frankenstein's monster of salvaged parts and borrowed scientific principle. Meanwhile, Tom's transformation accelerated. Gone were the late-night research sessions fueled by coffee and curiosity. A manic glint resided in his eyes, his sleep replaced by a relentless focus on a new project. Sarah found him hunched over his workbench, wires snaking across the cluttered surface like metallic vines. In the center, a complex device hummed with a low electrical buzz. "What is that?" she asked, her voice laced with apprehension. "My masterpiece," Tom replied, a manic grin plastered on his face. "An amplifier, Sarah. I can use it to strengthen the signal, establish a two-way communication with the entity on the other side." A wave of nausea washed over her. This wasn't scientific exploration anymore. It was a dangerous obsession. "Tom, you can't talk to that thing. It's dangerous." He scoffed, his voice laced with a newfound arrogance. "Dangerous. It's the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe, Sarah. A bridge to another dimension." Dr. Evans, his frail body burdened by the weight of his past, tried to reason with Tom. He explained the entity's malevolent nature, its ability to manipulate and control. But Tom was lost in a whirlwind of his own making. Sarah's nights became a chilling dance between reality and nightmares. The line between the two blurred, leaving her constantly on edge. She'd catch glimpses of distorted figures at the corner of her vision, fleeting images that resembled the entity's writhing form from the broadcast. Sleep offered no respite. The desolate wasteland became a recurring theme, the red sky bleeding into her dreams, the alien whispers echoing in her mind. One afternoon, while walking through campus, a horrifying realization struck her. She saw it again, the distorted figure flickering at the edge of her vision. This wasn't a dream. It was happening in broad daylight. Panic surged through her veins. The entity was reaching out, trying to breach the barrier between realities, and it was targeting her. Fear threatened to consume her, but Sarah clung to a sliver of hope. Soon, they would be ready. The EMP device, a crude contraption held together by sheer determination, was operational. Dr. Evans, despite his age and frail health, radiated a quiet strength. They would face the entity, not with weapons or brute force, but with a desperate attempt to sever the connection it had established. The weight of their mission pressed heavily on Sarah. If they succeeded, they could silence the broadcast, sever the link to the other dimension, and free Tom from the entity's influence. But if failed, the consequences were too horrifying to contemplate. Chapter 7: A Desperate Gamble. The air crackled with a nervous energy that mirrored the low hum of the assembled device in Sarah's cramped living room. The cobbled-together EMP emitter, a grotesque amalgamation of salvaged parts and borrowed science, was their only hope. It was a desperate gamble, a last-ditch effort to sever the connection with the entity before it consumed them all. The experience on campus had shaken Sarah to her core. Seeing the distorted figure in broad daylight, a chilling echo of the entity from Channel 13, solidified her fear. It wasn't just a threat anymore. It was actively reaching out, weaving itself into the fabric of their reality. Dr. Evans, his weathered face etched with worry, adjusted the final settings on the device. "It's not perfect," he admitted, his voice raspy, "but it should be enough to disrupt the signal for a while, maybe sever the connection permanently." "What about Tom?" Sarah choked out, the fear for her friend gnawing at her. The old professor's gaze turned grim. "The entity has latched onto him, Sarah. It feeds on his ambition, his desire for knowledge. Tom's communication attempts have made him more susceptible." A wave of guilt washed over Sarah. Their initial curiosity, the thrill of the unknown, had led them down this terrifying path. Tom, her best friend, was now a pawn in a horrific game, his mind twisted by the entity's influence. "We can't let him talk to it anymore," Dr. Evans stated, his voice firm despite his frail appearance. "Once we activate the EMP, we need to find a way to neutralize the device he built." Tom, however, was oblivious to the danger he was in. Gone was the brilliant, if slightly eccentric, friend Sarah knew. His eyes burned with an unnatural intensity, a manic grin plastered on his face. He tinkered with his own contraption, a complex antenna connected to a series of modified speakers designed to amplify the signal and send messages back to the entity. He spouted nonsensical gibberish, a language that seemed to echo the alien whispers from the broadcast. Sarah watched him in horror, a chilling certainty settling in her gut. Tom was no longer in control. The entity had weaponized his scientific curiosity, turning his research into a tool to strengthen its own hold. Ignoring the rising panic, Sarah and Dr. Evans formulated a plan. Sarah would distract Tom, keeping him away from his device, while the professor activated the EMP. They knew it was a dangerous gamble, a ploy that could easily backfire. Taking a deep breath, Sarah approached Tom, her voice trembling slightly. "Hey, Tom, look what I found," she said, brandishing a dusty book on theoretical physics she'd unearthed from her cluttered bookshelf. He glanced at the book with a flicker of his old curiosity, but the entity's influence was strong. "Later, Sarah," he mumbled, his eyes glued back to his device. Desperate, Sarah launched into a frantic explanation of parallel universes and string theory, hoping to rekindle his genuine passion for scientific exploration, to sever the hold the entity currently had. For a fleeting moment, a glimmer of his old self flickered in Tom's eyes. Then, with a growl of frustration, he pushed Sarah aside, muttering about the importance of his breakthrough. Dr. Evans, his face etched with determination, seized the opportunity. With a trembling hand, he flipped the switch on the EMP device. The room crackled with a surge of energy, a blue electrical pulse filling the space before dissipating in a silent flash. A deafening silence descended. The hum of Tom's device sputtered and died. But had it been enough? They held their breath, waiting. Chapter 8, Whispers in the Static. A tense silence stretched in the wake of the EMP's discharge. The air hummed with a faint electrical aftertaste, and the room seemed unnaturally still. Sarah and Dr. Evans held their breath, their eyes fixed on the television screen. The static on Channel 13, a constant companion over the past few weeks, intensified for a moment, the colors swirling into a chaotic vortex. Then, a sound erupted from the speakers, a sound that defied description. It was a primal scream, a guttural roar of rage and pain, unlike anything Sarah had ever heard. It resonated deep within her bones, a final, desperate attempt by the entity to maintain its connection. The scream rose to a crescendo, then abruptly cut out. The static flickered one last time, then dissolved into a flat, black screen. Channel 13 was no more. Relief washed over Sarah, a wave so powerful it threatened to buckle her knees. They had done it. They had severed the connection, silenced the entity, and slammed the door shut on the desolate wasteland. Dr. Evans slumped back in his chair, his face pale but etched with a weary satisfaction. He had spent decades haunted by the consequences of his scientific hubris, and now, finally, there was a chance at closure. Turning towards Tom's inert form, a new wave of worry washed over Sarah. She knelt beside him, checking for a pulse. His breathing was shallow but steady. He stirred, his eyes fluttering open, and for a moment, a flicker of recognition crossed his face. "Sarah," he mumbled, his voice thick with confusion. "Tom, you're all right," she exclaimed, relief flooding her voice. He sat up slowly, rubbing his head. "What happened? Where am I?" Dr. Evans explained everything: the entity, the broadcast, their desperate plan. Tom listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. But as the story unfolded, a look of bewilderment washed over his face. I don't remember any of this," he stammered, his voice laced with genuine confusion. "Channel 13? An entity? It sounds like something out of one of your crazy conspiracy theories, Sarah." A mixture of relief and unease settled in Sarah's stomach. Tom was back, free from the entity's influence, but his lack of memory was unsettling. Had they truly severed the connection, or was the entity just biding its time, waiting for another opportunity? Dr. Evans offered a reassuring pat on Tom's shoulder. "Perhaps it's best if you don't remember, Tom. Some things are better left forgotten." The following days were a blur of doctor's appointments and concerned questions from friends. Sarah downplayed the entire ordeal, fabricating a story about a malfunctioning television and a harmless experiment gone wrong. Despite the fabricated explanation, the experience left an indelible mark on Sarah. The nightmare subsided, replaced by a persistent unease. Every now and then, she'd catch a glimpse of static on an old television screen, and a shiver would run down her spine. Did the entity truly lurk just beyond perception, waiting for a chance to break through? One starlit night, Sarah stood on her fire escape, gazing up at the vast expanse of the night sky. The memory of the red sky from the desolate wasteland flickered at the edges of her mind. A faint whisper, barely audible, seemed to caress her ear, a sound that defied language yet resonated deep within her. Was it just the wind or a chilling echo from a dimension beyond? Sarah closed her eyes, the whisper fading into the silence. The experience had changed her, forever etching a question mark on the boundaries of reality. The world seemed a little less familiar, a little more vast, and the line between the seen and unseen forever blurred.